John had been driving for hours through the remote countryside, the fog thickening with every mile. His GPS directed him to a small guest house off the beaten path, a perfect place to rest for the night. It was an old, two-story house nestled in the woods, with ivy creeping up its stone walls. The sign outside simply read, "Guest House." Despite the eerie atmosphere, John was exhausted and needed a place to stay. As he entered, the bell at the counter rang on its own, though no one was there to greet him. After a few moments, an elderly woman appeared from the back, her pale skin and hollow eyes making John feel uneasy. "One room?" she asked with a slight smile that didn't reach her eyes. He nodded and quickly handed her the money. She gave him a rusty old key and pointed upstairs. "Room 7, she said softly. "But remember, don't open the door at the end of the hall." John felt a chill but brushed it off, figuring it was just his exhaustion getting to him. He climbed the creaky staircase to the second floor. The hallway was dimly lit by flickering lights, and as he made his way to room 7, he couldn't help but notice the door at the very end of the hall. It looked older than the others, with a heavy padlock hanging loosely from its latch. Shaking off his curiosity, John entered his room. It was small and smelled of mildew, but the bed looked comfortable enough. He settled in, but something felt off. The air seemed colder inside, and he could hear strange creaking noises outside his door. He tried to sleep, but was startled by the sound of footsteps in the hallway. At first, he thought it might be other guests, but when the footsteps continued without pause, he became uneasy. They seemed to circle back and forth, slow, deliberate steps right outside his room. He stood up, tiptoed to the door, and listened closely. The steps stopped, and for a moment, all was silent. Then a whisper, faint but clear, "Come, open the door." John's heart raced. He peeked through the peephole but saw only darkness. He remembered the old woman's warning and told himself not to open the door. He returned to the bed, pulling the covers over himself, but the whispers grew louder. Come to the end of the hall." The temptation was unbearable. Curiosity gnawed at him. What was behind that door? What was so important that the old woman warned him about it? Unable to resist any longer, John crept into the hallway. The floorboards groaned beneath his feet as he approached the locked door. His hand trembled as he reached for the rusty padlock, noticing it was unlocked despite its appearance. He hesitated, but then, with a shaky breath, he pushed the door open. Inside was a small, dim room, with dust particles floating through the air. At first glance, there seemed to be nothing unusual, just a few old chairs and a dusty mirror hanging on the wall. But then, he saw it. A figure sitting in the corner, barely visible in the shadows. It was a woman, her long black hair covering her face, dressed in a tattered white gown. John froze, his throat dry, unable to move. The woman slowly lifted her head, revealing her sunken eyes and a twisted, malevolent smile. "You shouldn't have opened the door," she whispered, her voice cold and hollow. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him, and the room plunged into darkness. The woman's figure began to rise, her bones creaking as if they hadn't moved in years. John stumbled back, desperately trying to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. The air became thick with the scent of decay as the woman advanced, her twisted limbs reaching out for him. Panic set in. He slammed his fists against the door, screaming for help, but no one answered. The woman's icy fingers grazed his arm, and the room filled with an unnatural cold that cut through him like a knife. Her face was inches from his, her breath rancid, her eyes glowing with malevolent hunger. John screamed as the room seemed to swallow him whole, the woman's laughter echoing around him. And then, darkness. The next morning, the elderly woman stood at the front desk as if nothing had happened. Another guest entered, weary from travel, asking for a room. She handed over a key with a familiar smile and whispered, "Room 7. But remember, don't open the door at the end of the hall." Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this spine-chilling tale of the haunted guest house, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe for more terrifying stories that will keep you awake at night. Have you ever stayed in a place that gave you the creeps? Let me know in the comments. And remember, some doors are better left closed. Until next time, stay safe and beware of what lurks in the shadows.